Hi there, come on in. I'm Fred Trost, and I tell you, you are going to enjoy this edition of Michigan Outdoors. Do we have trophy fish? Look at this. We're going to have a 22-pound brown trout story to tell you. This is a great trophy. You all recognize that, but catch this here. This little fish is really not such a little fish. It's a trophy in its own right. Chip Jesko is going to tell us all about it in a minute because it's Thursday night. Time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties, we'll look around again at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan.
Chip, are you okay? Can you hold that up there? Your arms aren't getting too tired, are they?
No, not terribly.
I tell you, he's holding a trophy fish, though. Chip, you're from Lansing, and the story was, where did you catch this monster?
Well, we were calling around the state trying to find some good smelt dipping, and we ended up calling to Boyne City.
Mm-hmm. They have an early run up there.
And we went to a place called Advance by the power plant.
Mm-hmm.
And they were dipping pretty fair. They said it was the end of the run. We got about 2 tubs full in an hour and a half.
And how big were they generally?
They were generally about 4 or 5 inches.
So fairly small. That's an average smelt. Good eating, nice eating size, but this monster came up in your net?
I don't know how.
Wow, that's a... Yeah, how did you do it, Chip? What's the secret? Well, this is a great smelt, though. Ned Fogel, you ever seen a smelt this large?
Yeah, I've seen some about this size, but you don't see very many.
Of course, this is an extremely important fish in the state.
Very important for forage, particularly for big fish like the brown trout.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, these are tasty fish. You got... Whoa! It's not still alive, is it?
I hope not.
Of course, it's also very important to our recreational fishery, too. A lot of people dip smelt.
A lot of people are dipping, and we still are. We're going to have a little report at the end of the show, our weekend outlook of where the smelt dipping should be hot, or at least lukewarm this weekend. But that is really a great smelt. Not too many of you people think to call up a fish like this, but Chip, I'm glad you did. Came down and showed it to us. But stick around here. We're going to... Come on over here, Ned. I want to talk about a fish that is really interested in smelt like that. This is a brown trout, a 22-pound brown trout, caught by John Brennan of Plymouth. John, I've heard you've been fishing for years and years and years to catch a fish like this.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Really? You've never been brown trout fishing before?
No, nothing bigger than a walleye.
Well, that's great. Is this your rod?
No, I borrowed the rod and reel from one of my friends, and another fella bought the lure for me in the line. So I really am not a... It wasn't until the day before we went fishing that I decided to go with him. So.
Well, I tell you, you're going to have a lot of people that want to take you out on their boat with the kind of luck that you're running. But look at this lure you caught it on. It would resemble an alewife in our Michigan waters, right, Ned?
It's a herring-type fish, right? You'll notice how dark it is on top and shiny on the light color on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people may be wondering how you compare that with your smelt as a forage fish. Actually, the smelt is a rainbow smelt, and they're very bright colored, and they have a very dark back when they're in the water. It's lightened up considerably. But these type of lures that have that dark back and light underbody are the ones that generally are very good lures for these large predator fish.
Okay, well, this is a 22-pound brown trout. Not too common, that size, but Ned, Michigan has some mighty big fish, mighty big browns.
We have big. Our state record is 31, just a little over 31 pounds. But that's only 2 pounds underneath of the North American record. And with the large amount of forage we have, we've got every chance of breaking that record. Well,
John, I know that fish is getting heavy. I want to show the net you used to haul it in. Look what happened to that net. That's seen its day right now.
Right.
How long did this trophy brown battle?
Oh, it seemed like about 2 hours, but I imagine about 15, 20 minutes.
And of course, did it jump at all?
Yeah, when it first hit, it felt like a snag, and then it jumped about 3 feet out of the water.
Oh.
And Ed Hemker, the guy who was driving the boat, had to swing the boat around so we could get, a good angle on it.
Uh-huh.
Luckily, I had a long rod, I guess, and it gave a lot of flex, and I fought it until we got near the boat. And then it really gave us problems.
Really gave you problems. You can see by the net there. It's not really characteristic for a brown trout to jump.
not usually.
So
Not big ones. The smaller ones will, but generally when larger fish, they don't jump that much.
This one jumped because one of the guys in the boat yelled when it did.
Well, I imagine. Boy, that is a great fish. Well, I suppose both of you guys are going to have your trophies mounted. You have a mounted, Chip?
Well, maybe.
Maybe. Well, we'll talk about that. It is a trophy smelt, trophy brand. Thanks for coming down. I want to show you guys some trophy fish that were caught last year. But the thing is, they were all caught on night crawlers, which is our feature coming up. So let's look at our trophy report. We always associate panfish fishing with worms and crawlers, and last year's second largest bluegill was 1 pound 3 ounces, caught on a crawler by Robert Borst of Hudsonville. He caught it in Chippewa County in the UP. Now, Joanne Anderson from Harvey, Illinois, used a crawler to catch the 6th largest perch, 2 pounds 1 ounce, from Lake Gogebic. Now, stream trout also readily take worms, but here's a 6 pound 1 ounce inland brown trout caught by 7-year-old Stephen Sponseller from St. Clairsville, Ohio. He was fishing in Lake Bel Air, a great brown trout lake this year. An Erie Deary in a crawler was the magic attraction. Another UP crawler catch was this 6.5 pound largemouth bass. Mike Junty from Bruce Crossing caught it from Ontonagon County's Bond Lake. The top white sucker last year, also 6.5 pounds, hit a crawler for Terry Vining from Wyoming, fishing in the Grand River, Kent County. Last year's largest red horse sucker, it was 8.5 pounds, taken from the Muskegon River, also took a crawler. Now, catfish go for night crawlers, too. Brian Howell from Royal Oak took this 9.5 pound channel cat from East Twin Lake, Montmorency County. And the top channel cat, 18 pounds 14 ounces, fell for a crawler, and so did the largest flathead catfish, a 33 pounder caught in White River. Drifting with crawlers accounts for a lot of walleye in Michigan every year, like the largest one of 1981, caught by 10-year-old Doug Schultz from Grays Lake, Illinois. 14 pounds 1 ounce from Houghton County's Portage Lake. Now, we started with panfish, but we'll end on a muskie. Next to the 33-pound flathead catfish, it's the second largest fish taken from Michigan on a night crawler last year. Since Stephen Rich from Mount Clemens sent in a picture with his Master Angler application, this photo of Steve and his 32-pound Great Lakes muskie caught on a night crawler in a harness in Anchor Bay makes Steve Rich our Master Angler of the Week. You have seen the monstrous fish that can be caught on night crawlers in the state. It's probably the most popular bait that we have. Bob Poached, you are going to achieve the title as the worm man in Michigan, the crawler man. Now, I know you are because, Bob, I met him at Outdoorama this past February, and he was selling worm bedding and, how to keep crawlers. He says, gee, you can keep them year-round.
That's right. Keep me year-round, Fred.
Boy, I never could keep them more than 3 or 4 days. I did everything I was supposed to do. I took my crawlers, you always have some left over from fishing, and I took them sometimes, if I was going to give them a lot of care and attention, I put them in a bucket of dirt in the garage, threw a little coffee grounds on top.
And left.
No, I added some water. Okay. Sometimes a little too much, I think,
Right,
I'm not sure. And I don't understand what happened.
Well, they usually get too warm when you do a trick like that.
Is that
They have to
the
be,
number one thing that kills
The
them?
number one thing that kills them is heat. They have to be maintained at a temperature between 40 and 50 degrees to really be kept properly.
Actually, I know that now. I know that now because I read a book which Bob gave me at Outdoorama. He says, read this over, see if this would make a good segment for your show. The Nightcrawler Manual. And I tell you, this has more in it about night crawlers. Their diagrams, where they live, how, their anatomy and biology. And look at this. Here's how a diehard night crawler catcher really goes after them. Look at this guy. He's the guy who wrote the book. He has a headlamp for use at night, and then these buckets here are actually just, the plastic gallon milk containers with the tops cut off around his belt. I mean, he goes after this in a real serious way, which is what you really have to do, right,
That's
Bob?
right.
You can't.
Right.
Worms they're just not worms. They're just not things that live in the dirt and eat dirt.
They're a living creature. And if you keep them, you have to keep them just like you do a pet.
I mean, Rodney Dangerfield would be perfect. Worms, they don't get no respect.
Right.
They don't. Let's unveil our worm farm here.
Okay, these worms were picked in the latter part of March, and they've been kept in the bedding and under refrigeration since, okay?
Okay, number one rule, refrigerate your worms. They have to live between 40 and 60 degrees.
Right.
Now, you said these worms, these crawlers, these are night crawlers, not just like angleworms. These were picked. Okay, let's explain this. They say go out on an evening in the summer. In fact, right now is a good time of year.
Right.
At dark, because they only come out at dark.
That's right.
With a flashlight, and find them and grab them, pick them up.
Right.
Not that easy.
No, it's not that
It's easy to pick up a half a worm. Real easy.
That's what a lot of fellas end up with most of the time is half the crawler.
Okay, and why don't you explain why that is?
Well, they usually grab it or pinch it if the, well, let's lay it against here if we can. The worm is attached here in the ground. Oh, boy, he's
To its
wiggly.
tunnel.
To its tunnel. He does not leave his tunnel unless he's forced out by water. And when they grab, you grab like, You
Not
grab
that easy to
so,
grab a worm.
and you just bring them up, okay?
And pull it
And-
straight out, perpendicular out of the
Right
hole.
straight out of the hole, okay? If you feel he broke, don't just drop him back down on the ground. Don't even put him in here.
Don't put the
Like
stress
that.
on him.
No.
Okay, now the thing is, what I learned in this book, that night crawlers, except when it rains, don't come out of their burrows.
No.
They always leave a little bit of their tail in there, and the way they gather food is they stick their heads out, and one end is a mouth.
Right.
And they actually grab little bits of organic material and pull it back down.
Right.
Sometimes they store it.
They'll store it down there for the winter months when they live down underground out there in the frost season.
These worms are not dumb. I mean, they have a whole system of life.
That's right. They have a whole network of little tunnels underneath the ground where they can go.
And it also says in the book that worms, when they're underground, these night crawlers, in their tunnels, just sort of sit there. They don't do
That's
much.
right. That's right. 90% of their life-sustaining abilities are done above the ground.
Above the ground, while the tip of their tail
Right.
is in the tunnel.
Right.
That's amazing. And they, all night long, they're just feeling around and
right.
getting little bits of
Right.
food.
That's how they find each other, by crawling around. They have no eyes. They have no ears. They can see nothing or hear nothing.
Boy, they do pretty well for what they don't got.
Right.
Now, the thing is, you say keep them in a container like this with no lid,
Right.
and dump, this is one of the products that you,
Right.
that you handle, which is kind of fascinating. This is not dirt. Dump this out here. This is shredded paper.
Right. Shredded paper. It's got nuggets in it, worm booster in it, minerals in it, and peat in it for primary food.
So what you do is you soak this in a prescribed way to make it moist,
Right.
put the crawlers in that you catch,
Right.
and then you feed them. Now, this is great. It says back here on the back of this, the crawlers come to the surface to eat, and then when the feed is gone, it's time to feed again, so you don't mix it in with the
You
dirt.
don't mix it in, but if you have to mix it in, it won't hurt anything. It does
Hmm.
not ferment underneath the bedding.
Okay, this is non-fermenting type
Right,
of food.
right.
Okay, so if a fisherman has his crawlers, some bedding, the right kind of food, a container like this that's open,
Right.
puts it in a refrigerator, how long will they keep?
He can keep them all summer with no problem, as long as he maintains them.
That could save you a lot of money and be fun, too. Now, let's talk about collecting crawlers right now. When they come out and they are loose in the morning in the puddles of water, fascinating. It says in the book that they do that because they run out of oxygen.
That's right. That's right. They come out of the rainwater forces them out of their tunnels because there's no oxygen in the rainwater.
But if there was oxygen in the water, like in a stream or somewhere, they can live in the water
can-
for a
yes,
while.
Right. They can live for 24 hours if there's oxygen in the water.
So actually, they're suffocating down there, and that's why they come out. So that's a good time to collect them at this time of year after a
Best
rain.
time of the year is after a heavy spring rain. Then you can catch them and you don't hurt them because they're just laying on the top.
Wow.
And if you can find a good area, you can collect 5,000 a night.
Well, I tell you, we're going to have our address coming up where you can write. We're going to send you Bob's address, some of his information on this stuff, and how to get a hold of this book, because there's a lot more to night crawlers than meets the eye.
That's right.
Ned Fogel, come in here. This is really something. We're going to go out fishing with Bob when in June.
June.
And he's going to show us how to transport them, store them in a boat, and all of that. But of course, let's go to something here, Ned. Kind of a fun type of fishing, sucker fishing,
No, that's a lot of fun.
which uses crawlers. We have some film right here of a fellow's name is Scott Martini. And Scott, in 1978, was the state record holder for a period of 13 days with a white sucker. Of course, the sucker run is, what? It's on the tail end of the sucker
We're on
run
the, we're on the
now.
tail end of the white sucker run.
Now, what a typical sucker fishing rig is, some weights, maybe 1, 2, 3 ounces, because you're fishing in a river with current. Bob, see that gob of worms?
Right, right.
You say that's a no-no.
That's a no-no.
We're going to learn about that when we go fishing with you. You hook them once?
That's right. I hook them once.
Okay, well, Scott is using a modified method. He's using the old gob of worms method, which a lot of people use, and it produces fish.
If you're fishing catfish, you've got to use a gob.
Yeah. Catfish and suckers here, you can get away with it. But fish 2 rods at once. That's what a lot of sucker fishermen have been doing. Of course, a lot of them use hand lines just tied to a stick on the bank.
This time of year when you have a lot of suckers coming in, it's fairly easy to get a good mess of suckers, and they're a fine eating fish, too.
Now, a lot of people don't realize that. They say, well, why don't more people eat suckers?
Well, I
The
think-
answer is,
I think they're bony, and I think people don't know how to prepare them. You have to be able to prepare them properly, be able to smoke them or can them so that you can soften the bones, and they have a very white, delicate, flavored meat.
well, here's Scott's girlfriend, Becky Wixom. She's from Flushing, and she's hauling in, very excited. This is a fun fish for kids to catch, women, well, anybody.
And they give a pretty good little scrap for their size, too.
They sure do. And this is a white sucker, which is the most common sucker. in the state?
We have a number of suckers. In the cold water streams, the white sucker is most common. We also have the long nose, that's the one that has the dark back. And then, of course, we have the red horse suckers down here that are a warmer water sucker, and they can be caught throughout the summer.
And you can see right there the mouth, which is why it's called a sucker, vacuums the bottom,
Right.
picks up those little worms and all sorts of things down there. Well, that's it, a white sucker. One species is going to be caught on worms. It can be. Bob, this is just great. I wish we could spend an hour and tell everybody all about worms, because there's really so much to know.
There is a lot to know about the creature.
Okay, but now we're going to get to another creature. Ned, stand in front of me here. Now, I don't mind a lot of critters, but John Davis here from East Lansing, you're from East Lansing, John?
Yes.
Is going to open this, and we don't have worms in here like Bob Pichet did.
Big worms.
No, we don't have worms like that. We have reptiles, and this reptile is a blue racer. Now, I might appear a bit squeamish because not against snakes. I don't have anything against snakes, but since I grew up, was little, I was told that blue racers will chase you. Now, it's hard to get rid of a fear like that. When I've run, I don't know from how many blue racers I've run from. Somebody said, there's a blue racer. Let's get out of here. But I couldn't believe that you were going to pick this up and hold it. This is an aggressive snake.
Yeah, they will bite when you catch them.
Do they normally bite when you catch them?
Just about always. You can almost count on it.
Oh, well, good.
Most constrictors will, but they very quickly get used to you. You don't
Yeah,
have to worry about
yeah.
Well, a snake this size must give a pretty healthy bite.
It hurts a little bit, but there's no real problem. I've never had any trouble with infection, anything like that.
But you enjoy snakes. You just do this for
Just for fun.
for
Yeah.
fun. Boy, I don't know about this. I can see the worms. I can see that, but this is getting a little hairy here. We have two more blue racers in here. Where do blue racers live at this time of year? Where do you catch them?
I tend to find them around the edges of open fields, usually near woods.
Oh, what the heck, I'll hold one. Of course, they're not slimy. Oh, I hope he doesn't have anything against me. What do they eat?
They tend to eat other snakes, small rodents, small birds, frogs, most anything they can get their mouth on, I guess.
Well, no wonder they have such a reputation. They eat their own kind.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is, a lot of people think snakes are slimy. Worms are slimy, no doubt about that. They have slime on their bodies, but snakes are very dry and scaly. Don't make a fast move, please, Mr. Snake. You catch them, you say, at this time of year because they're kind of sluggish.
Yeah, they come out in the springtime when it's a nice sunny day, temperature gets up to around 70 or so. They'll be out sunning, and they're still slow enough to run across them. Also, the grass isn't that high, so they don't have that much cover. I never really see them in the summertime.
Now, is that as large a blue racer as they get, or do they get bigger?
Well, this is the largest one I've ever caught. He's about 5 feet 8 inches.
And what is it about snakes that fascinates you?
I'm not really sure exactly. I just find them very interesting.
Interesting enough to allow yourself to get bitten
Yeah.
when you catch them.
Yeah.
Then you go out and pick them up by the body, or try to pin their head down with a stick? or what?
Usually they're on the move, so you just have to grab them where you can, somewhere in the body.
Man,
it. And they're like any other wild creature. When you grab them, they're going to bite you. Until they
yes,
get used to it.
indeed. Well, I don't blame them. Well, this is really, and of course, you don't keep snakes for like pets.
Not usually. Blue racers do very poorly in captivity. They just won't eat. So I'll keep these for a week or so, and then I'll take them back, let them go.
So that eliminates the feeding problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is very interesting, John. Appreciate you coming down with these snakes. Well, we have a lot of interesting creatures on the show this week. I'm just going to set them right down there. Of course, those are just for fun, and they provide a real function in nature. Not really good eating. I mean, who eats blue racers? Some people eat rattlesnakes, right, Ned?
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to move over here to Ed right now, and you guys might want to listen to this. This is a recipe for brook trout or rainbow trout or maybe some small brown trout. Have you ever had poached trout?
No, I haven't.
Let me show you right now. These are some trout that I caught. Now, I didn't poach them. I'm going to poach them. Now, there's a difference there.
You got them legally.
I obtained them legally. Poached trout, the way I'm talking about it, refers to a method of cooking. Now, this method of cooking, Ed, is not really an American innovation. It's something that's come from Europe, France, really. And poaching is, well, similar to the fish boil recipe we had on a couple months ago.
That was very popular, by the way.
Oh, a lot of people like that, and I think they're going to like this recipe, too. What I'm showing you here is not exact ingredients. You might want to jot them down. This is a basic poaching recipe. We have a green pepper, an onion, we'll chop those up, some cheddar cheese soup. This will be for the sauce. Have some peppercorns. We're just going to use a few of them. Thyme is the only real spice we're going to use. A carrot. These will all go into the broth, except the cheddar cheese. And something else that is very important in poaching, at least traditionally, is white wine. We use a good Michigan wine here right now. We're going to also have some vinegar. Vinegar is used in various ways in poaching recipes, but we're going to do a simplified version. We're going to also use a simplified pan right now. You can do small trout or small fish in a frying pan. They make special poaching pans, which are like roasting pans with a rack on the bottom, but we're not going to go to that length right now since we're just showing a basic poaching recipe. But what I'm doing is measuring out, really, the amount of broth we're going to need. I'm going to get put the fish in the pan. Now, this is only for measuring purposes because I don't want to get too much broth. And I'm going to make the mixture here with the wine and the water. Some people put 50-50. I don't.
And you put about 70-30.
70-30. Well, if you like the taste of wine, you can put more. Some people put a lot of wine and some people put less. It's all up to your individual taste. We have that wine-water mixture. We take the fish out now that we have our basic broth measured. Now we're going to add some ingredients to the broth. Again, cook's choice. What the recipe I got a hold of recommends is chopping up some onion. You use spices and ingredients that, really add a flavor to the broth. This will almost sound like a soup recipe. Take a green pepper, chopped up, add to the onion. Mix that in. Some of the poaching recipes are not complicated, but they do involve quite a few ingredients. Put some carrot in there. One of the essentials, well, some spices here, a couple peppercorns, and then we're going to put in a pinch of thyme. And that's really about all I'm using in this one, just a basic recipe. But an essential thing in poaching fish is having fresh fish. Now, it can be a frozen fish, but a fish should not have any smell when you hold it right up to your nose. You shouldn't be able to smell it at all. That's the type of fish I like to eat. Of course, that's one advantage of sport fishing. You can have fresh fish. We'll light the stove here, and I know I have a fresh trout. Going to simmer these ingredients for about 20 minutes on the stove to get that broth going. Now, in France, one way they do this is they do it almost like lobster. They keep their fish live in the stream. The way people take a live lobster and drop them in the water. It's called bluing a trout. Poaching and bluing. And what they'll do is they'll drop the fish. It'll be dead, but recently killed. Drop it in this vinegar mixture mainly, and the fish skin will turn blue.
Now, have you cleaned this fish, Fred?
It's field dressed. The gills are out and the entrails are out. You can cut the head off if you want. Something sort of traditional about leaving the head on a trout. Once the water is boiling, we want to cut it back to simmer, where it's sort of a slow, it's just bubbling, it's sort of twitching, not boiling hard. And we're going to put the trout in there for 10 to 20 minutes. You really can't mess up a recipe like this. Poaching, that's an advantage. It isn't like frying, where you have a real danger of overcooking and burning and getting it mushy. But while that is poaching, we're going to take a little bit of the broth, baste it over the top. See, actually, there should be a little more broth in there than that. But we're going to take the cheddar cheese soup, add, couple tablespoons of the broth, and mix it up, and we're going to make the sauce that goes onto the trout. Two aspects of poaching. One is the broth, the bouillon, court bouillon as it's called, that the fish steeps in, poaches in, and the other is the sauce. A lot of people use a hollandaise type sauce with poached fish. But it's a simple recipe. The skin will come right off of there, by the way. There's also ways of cooking this by wrapping the fish in cheesecloth, depending on the size, but I tell you, it's an elegant recipe.
I see you're dressed for the occasion.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Look at that. Garnish it with maybe some new little potatoes and some parsley. Serve it with asparagus, watercress salad. Ooh. You can get this recipe, but it looks like a good weekend. Morels should be popping this weekend with the rain, so keep your fingers crossed. Conditions are ideal. We should have a good May coming up in Michigan outdoors. Get out there and enjoy it. And of course, Remember, if you want more information on anything you've seen on Michigan Outdoors, our controversial issues, recipes, wildlife, fishing, write to us. We'll send you details on how to join the new Michigan Outdoors Club and receive this kind of information regularly in our new publication, Inside Michigan Outdoors. Write to us at Box 1, East Lansing, 48823. DNR Director Howard Tanner, a champion blue tick coonhound, and a scrumptious pheasant recipe will be Michigan Outdoors highlights next week right here on PBS, so join us.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. Sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.